hey, do you want to come meet Tim McGraw? And I said, yes.
That's actually, your segues are usually terrible. That one's actually pretty good.
I prefer walking over segues, but
And we're back.
I never doubted whether God existed. I just wonder if he cared.
I think that our doubts can actually pull us to a place where they're not pushing you further away, but they're pulling you closer to God.
What do we do when we have doubt?
Yeah, I think the example of Thomas gives us 3 simple steps.
Hello and welcome to the Sunday Huddle. As always, we are so grateful to be sponsored by Sports World, and as always, just grateful to be joined by Bryan and Nathan.
Hello.
How we doing, fellas?
Doing great.
hi.
Yeah, so hey, real quick, I know you're going to start us off. This is a great week. We want to be careful, that often that, our episodes come out weeks after we do something. But congratulations are in order to Nathan.
Ooh.
Nathan has just had a baby, a child. Tell us about number 3, number 3.
Yeah, my wife had a child.
Very good use of the pronouns. That's right.
I did have the hardest job of sleeping on the hospital couch for a couple nights, though.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that it was harder, but it's definitely harder than.
Yeah.
birth.
Let's not use that. That's
No.
alienate our.
But yeah, 3 boys. 3
Yeah,
boys in our
3
house,
boys.
so
Congratulations.
Not a lot of
man.
sleep happening, but that's all right. Caffeinated and ready to go.
Congratulations, man. What a blessing, right?
Yeah.
Praise
it is
God.
very much, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That sounds like a fun time. Another fun time.
Oh, no.
No, I was thinking about this time when out of the blue, it's probably how the water breaks and you're like, oh, got to do something. I guess that's what happens. I don't know.
I don't know.
Out of the blue, I get a call from my brother and he says, hey, do you want to come meet Tim McGraw? And I said, yes. And he said, okay, we'll get in your truck and head to WinStar right now. The concert's going to start. I can get you in. I'm like, okay. And so I'm not prepared for this at all. So I just ran. I get there. 35's a mess. It's great. So much fun getting there. I think I'm going to be late. We end up getting there, and as I go to meet him, he says, so actually, it's this dude from my fraternity who's getting us in here. I'm hoping he shows up so that way he can get us in. We're going to have good seats, and then we're going to go meet him backstage after. I'm like, I don't know. So he calls this dude. The dude ends up coming back. We get to watch the concert. Great concert, everything like that. And then they end up saying, okay, we're going to go to this room. And so we go to this backstage in this room. It doesn't really...
First of all, is this a fictional story? Is this a real story?
This is a real story.
Okay.
And as we're in there, the concert's over and we're sitting there for a good 30, 45 minutes. And I'm just sitting there wondering, like, all right, is he really going to show? Is this actually going to happen? This whole is just kind of weird and everything like that. And the whole time driving, like, are we actually even going to get to go in and any of this? Yeah. Long story short, long story schmedium. Yes, we absolutely did. He showed up. He's shorter than me. I felt good about that. He's still a good looking guy. And it was crazy to just sit there and like doubt, like, even though we were there, even being backstage, I was sitting there doubting, like, am I actually going to get to meet him? And it was kind of cool.
What a great story, and told like a real man. The one thing he really wanted us to get to know is that he was taller than Tim McGraw.
That is true.
That is the thing.
True.
The thing that he kind of leaned in on. Every man resonated with that part of the story. Every part of, but you had doubt as to whether or not you would get to meet him.
Yeah.
So interesting. That's actually your segues are usually terrible. That one's actually pretty good.
I prefer walking over segues, but
And we're back.
He had taken a step forward. It is 2 steps back. It is 2 steps
rolling
back.
through those jokes.
They just get worse. They just get worse. So doubt. We're going to talk a little bit about today about doubt, but it's actually interesting, and probably the reason that you used that story in that example. Our doubt is going to be dependent upon who we're supposed to trust, right? Initially, right? So this is your brother. Is your brother trustworthy?
I'm going to plead the fifth on that one.
Well, not just your brother. It was your brother's random fraternity guy.
Yes.
I was hoping in the story, by the way, that the story ended when you said a guy from his fraternity was going to be that he was a Tim McGraw like impersonator or something.
I thought that's where we're going.
That would have
too.
been fun.
That would have been
That's
pretty
right.
fun.
He's like a 5'2" Tim McGraw.
I'm going to steal that version of the story and tell it at parties, actually.
I think don't ever let the truth stand in the way of a good story.
Yeah,
Exactly right. So doubt. So we're talking a little bit about today doubt. So let's go right into it. So I was going to think about today, what are the sources? We're talking about doubting God, obviously, And I was thinking there's kind of 2 different categories. Doubting that God exists, and then doubting he's going to do what he said he was going to do. I had a friend of mine who used to share his testimony. I heard a bunch of times he'd share his testimony. One of the great lines in his testimony, he said, as he was growing up, he said, I never doubted whether God existed. I just wonder if he cared.
Right.
And I thought that was a really kind of an interesting way to look at it, you know?
Right.
So I think there's kind of two doubts, doubt whether God exists or doubt whether he's trustworthy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of Christians just wrestle with, both,
Yep.
but especially the second one, I think wrestle with doubt if God actually cares, or maybe that like is fleshed out in a different way of like, I read these things in the Bible and I think I believe that they're true, but then life feels really not like that.
Right.
So then we start to doubt, man, is that actually true? And I think sometimes maybe that the second one is what then leads to the first one. Then you do eventually, now I am going to start to doubt. Okay, well, if none of this stuff is actually working out, then is God even real? Then it leads to that doubt. Like, I think that's probably jumping way ahead in the episode, but that's
For a youth pastor,
Unchecking.
that's a pretty good observation, isn't it?
Right. No, that's actually, I'm really glad that you worded it that way, because I agree. I think sometimes it's like, doubting God to the next level of, well, this is all happening. Does God even exist? Because it's easy when things are happening in our life. And I like to go to Matthew 11 when John the Baptist is in prison, and I'll just read 11, 2 and 3. Now, when John heard in prison about the deeds of Christ, he sent word by his disciples and said to him, "Are you the one who is to come, or shall we look for another?" And I think that's just great. Like John the Baptist, he's the one who's preparing a way in prison, and he's like, so wait, that is you, right? Right. you are really God, right? And I love how Jesus doesn't even answer it being like, yeah, I am. It's more of go and look, and these are all the things I've done. And you probably have the verse memorized at this point, but where he doesn't talk about the chains being broken, to where he's implying that John is still going to be in prison
To what happens for him. And it's interesting. So let's get into that verse a little bit, though. It was that doubt by John? Do you think that was doubt by John? Probably was.
Oh, yeah.
I think so. Yeah. Doubt by John. And he wanted an affirmation that he was who he said he was, to indeed to be able to follow him. Thoughts on that verse or that passage?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the, like, it's a practical way of doubt. We think of like that example of doubt, and we see many in the Bible where it doesn't explicitly say, and then John doubted, and then Moses doubted, and then David doubted. But then we see written all over the place through that example, through a lot of the Psalms and stuff. I think we see like what practically doubt looks like in our life, of just questioning, like, hey, are you going to come through for me? Like you said you're going to. Hey,
Yeah.
are you going to do something right here?
So is doubt a sin? I've been trying to process through that a little bit.
Oh, I wasn't sure if you were asking a question
No.
of
Usually
a
I ask the
rhetoric.
question and I think I know the answer to it, but I don't know if I know the answer to it. Is doubt a sin?
You're the
No.
the-
Do you have
the
any thoughts on that?
resident
I don't know.
theologian.
Yeah, no, that's not true at all. Yeah, because I know everything. That's just like I say. Yeah.
No, I think it could be, but I don't think that in and of itself doubt is a sin. I think that we even see, now we do have the guarantee of sin too, but
Right.
I think we see even like in Scripture, we're going to doubt. Like it's going to happen. So I think it can lead us to a sinful place for sure. But I think that God very clearly calls us to and wants us to like lean into that, I think. And I think that our doubts can actually pull us to a place where you're like, they're not pushing you further away, but they're pulling you closer to God.
100%. I agree with that. And yeah, I think that's Bell. And I think your hesitancy to answer is kind of where I'm at right now. I think that it certainly can be.
Right.
I don't think it is initially, because I want to kind of alleviate, those who are hearing, okay, so every time I doubt, I've engaged in sin. I don't think it can start that way. I think it's sometimes like, when does concern about an issue become worry?
Right.
I don't know where the line is. I don't know where that hard line is that blocks those two things from taking place. But there's a place where that doubt is something that's that becomes a sinful thing.
And I would say that, like you said, the initial thought is probably not initially. Like
Right.
that's like there is a step where it does go into completely doubting God. But one of my verses that I love is in Mark 9, when the father is saying, hey, if you have faith, this is going to happen. And the father says, I believe, help my unbelief. Like,
So Mark, he wants his
raw.
child to be healed.
Right.
And he says, do you believe? And he said, I believe. Help me with my unbelief. That is, for me, that's like I said, I love this
Right.
verse. It's one of my favorite characters, right? That this idea, because I was like, that's me, man.
Right.
That's me. I do believe. But man, I don't believe sometimes. And beautifully, thankfully, gratefully, the Bible says, and this is a beautiful truth, we're getting probably too far ahead, but our lack of faith doesn't nullify God's
Right.
faithfulness.
Yeah.
We can lack faith and lack assured belief, but God is faithworthy. He starts a work in our salvation. He finishes the work. So he's the author and perfecter of our faith. So he is the one that's in control of it. But doubt is, I want to just maybe, first of all, now the reason I asked that question is because I want those who are listening to say, hey man, doubts are okay.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it kind of starts to venture into, again, not drawing a hard line because we can't, but I think maybe provide a little clarity. I think it starts to venture into sin if an example would be I'm doubting like the goodness of God's plan in my life or something. I don't know. I really feel like this is the right path for me, and I embrace and lean into that. And I do think you start to eventually enter into, well, now I'm the sin of pride and selfishness of thinking, hey, my way is better. So I'm doubting God's good because He's not doing things my way. Whereas maybe if you're wrestling with the doubt of you read and something about just the character and the nature of God, and it's like, man, it is so I don't know. That's so hard to wrap my mind around how that could even be a thing. I don't know about it. I think that's where you enter into those are the doubts we want to lean into, and we have and should be expected. And
and when we do lean into those doubts, like you said, I think that we can actually, from that, we can grow and indeed grow in our faith. I think of always, the one I was thinking about when we talk about doubt, when we use the character, we say doubting Thomas, right? I think of Thomas, right? So it's an interesting verse. So, Jesus had appeared to all these disciples. Thomas says, I'm not going to believe this. I'm absolutely not going to believe this. This is a paraphrase version. I'm not going to believe this unless I touch him. And Jesus walks in. And it's interesting to me, I don't see in the text anyway, he doesn't rebuke him, but he says basically, I'll meet you where you're at. Put your hand here, touch my side. And then in declaration and direct address in John 20:28, Thomas says, the Lord of me, my Lord and my God. In Greek, it's the Lord of me and the God of me. That's what he calls Jesus. So he after seeing him, he affirms this. But then the scriptures go on to say in elsewhere that we're blessed for those who haven't seen and believe.
Right.
That we can even not see and we can still believe and have that surety in that faith.
Right. I think that when we talk about just the doubt that God meets us at in some of our places, it also kind of goes to Habakkuk in the sense where he's asking how long, O Lord, shall I cry for help? And even in Psalms multiple times, there are aspects where they're like, God, where are you? And I love how Jesus can meet us in those places, just like he did with Thomas. And if you go to either Matthew 7:8 or Luke 11:10, for everyone who asks, receive, the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks, the door will be opened. It's important that in these times of our doubt, though, that we're I think that he's able to meet us because we're actually looking for him.
Yeah, and I think, Nathan, it's great that you set the framework for it for the very beginning, the way you set it out, because I think it's important that I don't think we need to stay in that place, because I think really tough things can happen and really strange things can happen, bad things can happen. When we stay in this place of doubt, it can foster complete unbelief that God doesn't exist. As we talked about in previous episodes, when we talk about the contingency argument for the existence of God, the moral argument for the existence of God, most people I meet, it starts off as this intellectual objection that how could there be this big bang, and how do we get something from nothing, and what is this necessary cause? And we go through all these academic things, and then invariably it boils down to something, man, I went to this church and they treated me like terrible.
Right.
And then, I went through a tough time at my house, and I prayed to God over and over, night after night, and I didn't believe he was there. So more often than not, it's this experiential thing that makes us have doubt.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I stayed up late last night praying, God, man, let this baby go to sleep.
And that prayer was in vain,
it was not answered. So, man, I'm struggling right now, guys. I think Thomas is a fun example. Thomas is a fun example because we think of whenever we're wrestling with doubt, I think there's a lot of shame and guilt that comes along with that, especially when we're talking about not just someone who's new and exploring the faith and wanting to, do I believe that there's a God that exists? But I'm talking about the person who's a Christian, maybe been a believer for a long time, and stuff has happened in life, and all of a sudden you find yourself man, I'm doubting God right now. And there's a certain level of guilt and shame that comes along with that. And then when you point out someone like Thomas, we call him Doubting Thomas, but we also forget that earlier with Lazarus and stuff, when Jesus wanted to go back and visit, his disciples were all hey, no, we can't go there. Are you sure, Jesus? We can't do that because the rulers there want you dead. And Thomas is the one who steps up and is good, let's go die with him.
What an interesting thing, this interesting observation, which again further characterizes us, right? What a beautiful example of sometimes I have this strong, bold faith. I'm going to die for Christ. Right. And then there's no way he could have possibly risen from the dead. Right. I ain't going to believe it until I touch him.
Right. It's fun. It's not really fun. But in all of these instances, it's it's truly the doubt creeps in when circumstances in our life, like God hasn't changed any of this. It's just our perception of him based off of the surroundings that we have. Kind of like when the disciples are on the Sea of Galilee and they're like, do you even care? Why are you asleep? Yeah. Like, and that the do you even care is it. Like you said, I'm so glad that you did start with that framework, because it does. I'm not to say that there aren't people who are trying to use science to try to justify an absence of a God or anything like that. But I don't think that it starts off with an academic venture, but it rather does start with, like you said, some emotional something or another.
And again, we're not trying to attack anyone, say that it's terrible when you do that, because I think it's normal. We want to say that it's common.
Right.
It's common, but it needs to be addressed. This is something where we need to be addressed. We don't need to stay in this state of doubt, because indeed God is faithful, because he said he's faithful. It's interesting, the verse that you pointed again, that they're on the boat and they're scared, and then Jesus calms the wave, and then they're terrified, actually, because they recognize, wait a minute, God is in our midst.
Right.
That's what causes them to be terrified.
Right.
So it's almost like we can't be pleased.
Right.
We can worry and struggle in ambidextrously, and we can worry. Okay, wait a minute. Now God's in our presence. What are we going to do with this? Which is a greater concern, right? To be in the presence of God and not be fit. None of us are fit to be standing in the presence of God. But that's an interesting passage too. That again, they doubted, and they had eaten of the multiplied. And again, so what solves doubt? That's kind of what we're going to get toward.
Right.
So what's the answer, man? We have doubt, and we're saying it's common, or it's frequent. It needs to be addressed. What do we do when we have doubt?
Yeah, I think the example of Thomas gives us, I mean, all of them really, we could look at this, but I think it gives 3 like simple steps. There's more, but simple steps for us. And the first one is just acknowledging it. Like acknowledge that it exists. Again, we feel at times, like there's shame and there's like fear and guilt mixed in. So I want to just pretend that I'm not doubting, pretend that it's not there, because I feel like I shouldn't be doubting. I'm supposed to be a strong Christian. I'm supposed to be a pastor or whatever. So I feel like I shouldn't be doubting. So I want to push it down. So we have to acknowledge it. Like Thomas does that, right? Like you said, he literally says, they're like, oh my gosh, Jesus is risen. He's like, I will never believe.
That's exactly
I will never believe. Show me the proof or it didn't happen. Kind of deal. And whenever we do that, it's dangerous. I kind of think of it this way. In my house, like I said, we have 3 boys, but even before we had 3, when there was 2 or just 1. In the morning, whenever we go to get ready for school and stuff, I'm always scrambling to get out the house, and inevitably, like the breakfast stuff is sitting on the table, on our kitchen table that was nice and clean. Our breakfast stuff is sitting there, but I'm too busy. I can't clean it up right now. I'm gonna get it when we get home. Well, then we get home from school and, oh my gosh, we have like soccer practice or t-ball practice or whatever. So it's quickly throw your backpacks on the table, pull the stuff out of your folder, toss it on the table and stuff, and then rush off to baseball practice. Yep. And then we get home and it's, oh man, it's so late. Let me go pick up something for dinner. Throw your baseball stuff on the table, go get dinner. And then we eat dinner and now it's time for bed. And then we leave all the dinner stuff out. And then you get to the end of the day and man, I am exhausted. I'm tired. And I look at the table and it is full of stuff. So I am too overwhelmed to even like think about it or address it at all. So I'm just going to go in my room and shut the door and I can't see it anymore until the morning when it becomes a big problem.
Right.
But if along the way, if I had taken the extra 10 seconds to just, let me just throw those dishes in the sink real quick. Hey, go put this in your room real quick instead of go hang up the backpack where it goes. If I had addressed it along the way, it wouldn't have piled up to this point where it became overwhelming.
Yeah.
So if we don't acknowledge our doubt, it starts to become like before we know it, we step back and man, all these doubts have piled up and I'm just going to close the door on it because it's overwhelming.
Yeah. So acknowledge it and we need to deal with it, right? Not to bury it, because it doesn't get better whenever we bury it.
Yep.
It doesn't go away whenever we do it. And that's that. Did I give us all 3 of us there?
Nope, that's the first one.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
That was long, I know. So acknowledge it. The second thing is you don't just acknowledge that you don't have to fake it for God. We saw that again. Even we see that example with Thomas. You don't have to fake it. It's not that Thomas didn't ever have real faith in God or anything like that, because God meets us where we're at. So we don't have to fake it for God. I promise you, He's bigger than your doubts. He can handle it. And then the last one is don't stay there, which Jeff you already talked about. Is recognize like. Doubts are going to happen and it's okay, but it's not okay to stay there, not okay to stay in that. So we want to seek truth in that. We see with Thomas that led him to a new place. I think it's Psalm 73 where the psalmist, like the whole thing is basically like doubting the faithfulness, the goodness of God, all of these things. And then at some point in the Psalm, it switches and he says, until I went into the sanctuary of God. And then the whole tone of it shifts of like, I'm wrestling with all this doubt. No answer, by the way. There's no answer given for it. Yep. Wrestling with all this doubt until I went to the sanctuary of God and worshiped him through that. So then that's when we say our doubt can draw us closer to God, because whenever through our doubt, when we worship, we do pursue truth. Certainly, don't hear I'm not saying. When we worship and pursue God through that, then ultimately we're drawn closer to him and find refuge for him. And
what a great message right there.
Right,
3-point message. Let's go.
Right. No, but it's so true. Especially step one of acknowledge, because we as believers, we're not supposed to be in isolation with any of this. And so when we go, I'll use an example that I did with Jeff years ago when I was asking about the difference in the lineage of Jesus. Matthew and Luke have very different ones, and specifically stemming from David, one's Solomon and one's Nathan. I'm like, wait a second, Nathan and Solomon are two very distinctly different people. How can this all be the same lineage of Jesus? And so it's like, this is a big deal, because Jesus, it changes everything. And so trying to figure out, it was great talking with him, and he even got some other people to help with as we're looking through this, and like, well, this is actually the lineage of Mary, this is the one of Joseph, this is where you're going for a physical one versus a kingly lineage, and it was a royal lineage, and it was really cool in wrestling with that, because the first time he I think Jeff actually said that answer first. I'm like, I need more than that.
Yeah, agreed.
I need more than that.
Yeah.
And so it was diving in it more about extra other sources that would kind of support, this is how you can come to this conclusion and why that. And it was one of those really cool moments that I went from doubting something, which I would say it's pretty essential of the lineage of Christ, to then being able to now that I've acknowledged it, it's been dealt with, that now I actually have, it's a muscle that I've learned that, no, I can trust in this, and I'm okay to ask with this. It's okay to wrestle with certain things. And in doing so, it furthers your love for God.
Yeah, and so all those things that you said about confronting it, acknowledging it, dealing with it in the sanctuary to do that.
Right.
It's through the Word. And I know that we sound like a broken record, but the Word's going to give us the answer for this thing. And so I found out, I told you the original, a long time ago, about Jehovah's Witness asking me, how can Jesus say the Father is greater than I? And that really it didn't make me doubt, but I thought, wait a minute, this is crazy. Why have I never looked at that? It's not better. It's not ontologically better. It's position. It has to do with position. But that was one of me that was like a light bulb moment, that I can have this thing that I don't know the answer to. But if I dig into God's Word, and I told somebody, right, hey, listen, man, I'm struggling with this verse, right? So I didn't keep it in and say, man, I don't know how I'm ever going to figure this verse out myself. And to be honest with you, had I not went to a Greek text or went to somebody who knew what it was, I would have struggled with that doubt for a long time.
Right. Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have understood what that passage means.
Right.
But the word that we have, it's trustworthy, and we indeed need to do that. Romans 10:17, so faith comes from hearing, and hearing through the word of Christ. That we need to turn to the Word, and then we can answer our doubt with faith that comes from Him.
Yep, absolutely. And those are perfect examples of like times when you leaned into that doubt, right? You want to lean into it. I tell like my students all the time when they come and they express maybe some kind of a doubt or question, and oftentimes it's brings with them a lot of they're like, I feel like I shouldn't even be saying this. I shouldn't have these feelings or whatever. Yeah. And I always will tell them the same thing of like, hey, I'm really glad that you're wrestling with this, because it tells me, hey, you care about truth. Right. You want to pursue truth. And we firmly, all three of us up here, right, would firmly say and believe that if you care about truth and you lean into, you actually seek to find the truth honestly, then it's going to lead you to God. It brings you to God. God can handle that. He wants you to test and find in that way. But if Bryan, with that one with the genealogy, and Jeff, the one that you mentioned with the Jehovah's Witness and stuff, if you just say, man, that's interesting and that's weird, and then you move on from it, well, then there's another one down the road, and there's another one, and before you know it, that table is full of stuff.
Well said. Yes, full of dishes, right, that you got to clean because your kid had to go to baseball practice. But here's it. Proverbs 3:5-6, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your way acknowledge Him, and He will make your path straight.
Be not wise in your own eyes.
So both of those say this. So there's these things then, hey, lean not on your own understanding. I'm giving you ahead of time, you're going to lean on your understanding. Don't do that. Be not wise in your own eyes. I'm trying to warn you. You're trying to be wise in your own eyes. Don't do that.
Right.
So we can have this wisdom that comes from us, so we can defer to the Word. But He who gives us this Word is trustworthy. We can have doubts. We need to answer those doubts. And at the end of the day, it comes down to this. It's not the amount of faith that we're allowed to muster or to garner. It's the object of our faith that matters.
Amen.
Our object of our faith is strong enough to hold our doubts. As we said, Lake Louisville could freeze over, and it could be 1 inch thick, and I could jump out there with great faith. And I'm probably about 155 pounds, but I could go on this 1 ounce of ice with great faith, and it would not be able to hold me up, right? Because maybe I'm 160. But the thing is, if it was 4 feet frozen thick, I could go out there with being hesitant. I could actually have a little bit of doubt. and I could just tentatively put my foot out there. But if it's 4 feet thick and it's frozen, the object of my faith is able to sustain me even when my faith is small and my doubt is great. Right. Don't make a weight joke because it's not appropriate.
Yeah, I could see him. He almost
got
had an aneurysm trying to hold it in. Well done.
He did. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll say it off camera. Don't worry.
I think, and I want to be careful with this one, but I think that one of the reasons maybe at times we are struggling with doubt, if we're questioning why am I wrestling with this? I think because sometimes our doubt is amplified in our disobedience. If we're walking in a time right now where, man, we just have not been walking in obedience to God. And lots of times our doubts are tied to things like, I'm starting to doubt the goodness of God because I'm not seeing that in my life. I'm starting to doubt his faithfulness because I feel like I'm not seeing that in my life. But also those blessings in the presence of God, those things are realized lots of times in obedience. We start to see those things present in our life when we're walking in obedience. So if I'm not walking in obedience, then I'm starting to experience the consequences of that, and it leads me to doubt. So maybe one step 2 for us is we need to examine our hearts. And is there sin that is unconfessed? I need to take that before God, confess that sin, and then now I want to lean into that doubt.
So well said. Otherwise, we gauge a cognitive dissonance, and we're going to change the way we think about God to be able to do what we want to do. Yeah. And so I would rather him not exist, right, than to be accountable for what I'm doing to explain all this doubt that I have.
Right. And like you said, when you approach God, yes, there is sin that we got to make sure that we're doing it too. But when we're looking at it, like in John 6, whenever the other disciples are leaving and the 12 are still there, and Jesus looks at them, he's like, do you want to go away also? And so parse that real quick and say, that's what happens when people deconstruct is they end up walking away. But if you dive a little bit deeper and you actually look into the word, you can hear what Peter answers when, Lord, to whom shall we go?
Yeah.
Your words give us eternal life. And there are so many people that have drank from the wells of the world, and none of them are more fulfilling than the true well of Christ. That's what you're it is everything. And so we hope that in your doubt that you're able to continue drawing from the well that gives life.
Preach. Yep. God is worthy, man. Hey, you're okay, man. If you have doubt, we certainly don't want you to stay there. We want you to turn to him and find out that he is indeed the true answer. And you can know him, and he can speak to you through his perfect word. And we're just grateful you joined us today.
And wherever you're listening, thank you for listening. If you're on YouTube, we would love if you would subscribe, ring the bell. That way you know if every time we have new episodes coming out. And then if you're on Spotify or Apple or any of those podcasting platforms, if you would leave us a 5-star review, that really, really helps those algorithms kind of as we push out to more people so they can hear about Jesus.
Peace!